Bloodshed, massacre, brilliant feats of engineering, and acts of suicidal bravery will mark the collision between the ancient world's two greatest superpowers, Rome and Carthage. It will be a fight to the death, and the outcome will change the course of Western history.
Legend has it that Hamilcar's 9-year-old son begged to watch his father lead Carthage into battle with Spain, and the father agreed on one condition, that the son would promise eternal hatred of Rome and commitment to that republic's defeat. And it was thus the son, named Hannibal, became the instrument of his father's revenge. And this was the first step on a path that would transform Hannibal into the most devastating foe that the Republic of Rome would ever face.
For 2 centuries, Carthage dominated the Mediterranean. But a rival across the sea to the north was steadily evolving into a military machine of unparalleled potency. Rome. These 2 superpowers would soon find themselves in conflict over the jewel of the Mediterranean, Sicily.
Carthage was built to trade, and Sicily was critical to that trading. Why? Because it's right bang slap in the middle of the most important shipping lane in the world. Whoever controls Sicily controls these vital trade routes. The Romans saw the enormous riches that Carthage could command, and it started to just elbow into them. And the Carthaginians nudge back and say, hang on, we were there first. Please, as it were, get your tanks off my lawn.
Both Rome and Carthage now had settlements on Sicily. This tension would trigger a series of wars that would rock the ancient world.
The Romans saw Carthage as a spear pointed at the very heart of Rome and at their own burgeoning trade empire, so of course they felt they had to eliminate it.
They would come to be known as the Punic Wars, named after the Roman word for the Phoenicians. The outcome would change the course of world history, and Carthage would be led by one of the greatest military geniuses of all time.
Hannibal Barca, faction leader and military general, resisted Rome's attempts to capture several coastal cities in Sicily, as well as Iberia. Hannibal took advantage of their defensive victories and pushed towards Syracuse in eastern Sicily. They besieged the city, but there was a large Roman force inside. Hannibal suspected, due to their victories, there was only one full army in Sicily. Consequently, Carthage besieged the city for as long as 2 weeks before the invasion. Hannibal's army was made up of mainly heavy Libyan spearmen, as well as some pike units including Polani and the elite Sacred Band pikemen. As for cavalry, Hannibal rode elephant back, but he also used long-shield cavalry. The Romans were composed of an assortment of heavy infantry including legionnaires and spearmen, as well as archer auxiliaries and javelin men. This was a turning point in the war for Hannibal. Take Syracuse and drive the Romans out of Sicily, or lose the battle and go on the defensive. Hannibal knew he only had one army in the region, and if he took too many losses, then Sicily could become a liability, and Carthage would lose its stronghold in the province.
In 2 months of frenzied work, they produced 6,000 shields, 18,000 swords, 30,000 spears, 120 ships, and 60,000 catapult missiles. Despite the arsenal Carthage had assembled, Rome had sent an overwhelming force. The city was alone, facing its own destruction.
Only 1 week later, the same Roman army marched on Hannibal, and he was forced to retreat back to Carthage, thus allowed the Romans to have an outpost very close to the mainland of Carthage, where they could launch an attack of biblical proportion and catch Carthage completely off guard. As well as capturing Sicily allowed the Romans to cut off all trade routes into Carthage, cutting off nearly 20% of Carthage's total income. In other words, this was the beginning of the end for Carthage.
The The city hunkered down behind its immense fortifications, hoping against all odds that their walls would repel the impending Roman invasion. The Roman siege squeezed the life out of the city from the outside, and eventually, although the immense land wall was never breached, the Romans managed to scale those at sea. Inside the city, the fighting continued street by street. Fears that the Roman commander Scipio Aemilianus ordered the city to be set on fire and leveled. Thousands of Carthaginians were burned alive in the blaze. During its siege and capture, Carthage had been decimated. The city's population fell from 500,000 to 50,000. The survivors were sold as slaves, never